feel like I did not have a cup with ice. And then we'll like sink and then it's hot. Sorry. I didn't want to you mentioned it. Yeah. Yeah,
No, with
just a little splash. Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to think my car was overlapping one of the drive inlets, and I was going. And there was a car in front of me that had just stood up a couple of feet. And we could bet.
Uh-oh.
So I got out.
Your otter's trying to join.
Oh, no.
I don't know. I turned mine off. I had to go through the settings to do it.
Maybe it's because like I always say yes, I'll be there, and just
It-
automatically pops up.
Well, if you signed up for one of those accounts, then it automatically says, I'll take notes of every meeting on your calendar. So you've got to go into the otter settings and turn everything on. You have any announcements this morning? Okay, I got it all then. Okay. Nothing changed. I'll just say prayers. Huh? Yeah, I'm kind of short on time with the video we're gonna watch. Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. I really don't want to hear about this.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming and sharing breakfast with me, so I didn't have to eat it all. Because I was really worried about me having to eat 30 people's worth of food for this. So thank you guys for coming. I'm going to hit the core value, and then we're going to introduce Highland Homes to come in and talk to us. And I've got they've got some flyers that we're going to show. So our core value is we never bring a problem without bringing and trying at least one possible solution. We are problem solvers, not problem identifiers. We encourage critical thinking and a proactive approach to handling issues. While asking for help is encouraged, it must be done in the context of also thinking of solutions on your own. Before we bring an issue or problem to a team member, we first think of ways to solve it. And I think somebody was trying to get in, so let me let them in real quick. I think they're all in. Oh, Kelly's in. Okay, great. Yeah, if you guys are trying to sign in online and you're not, and it asks you that you have to wait for admission, just switch to your 6th Ave Gmail account and then go in, because you're automatically in there if you're on your 6th Ave Gmail account. Okay, so let me introduce Shawnette and Ginger from Highland Homes, and I'm going to present their flyer that they have sent me. So let me jump over to that real quick, and I'll present that. Sorry, I had it pulled up and then I took it down. I'm sorry. Come on. All right. Hello, Mariah. Sorry, my technology is not communicating this morning.
It's okay. I had printer issues today, of course. So I sent him my inventory list. I'm down to 3 homes in Willow Park. They're all inventory homes. And Willow's finished. I'm going to be done in that neighborhood in the next 3 sales. So I need help. Anybody who wants to sell a house, make a little money, get a bonus for the next 5 days. We have $5,000 bonuses. Let me know. And that bonus also is company-wide. In-house lender incentive is $20,000 towards closing costs. I'd say 80% of buyers out there are buying down interest rates right now, as you probably know. So, but they can use this 20 however they want to. What else? You got.
Oh, okay. So, and I'm Shawnette Panna. I'm over in Bridgewater in Midlothian, and I too have inventory. We're still in our first phase. I do still have lots to build. We're under probably under 30 opportunities before this phase sells out, and we won't start phase 2 until next spring, early summer for pre-sale. But I do have great opportunities over there. I have some move-in readies that have, we can talk on those as far as anything a little extra. Build incentive, I think we're probably going to extend this or maybe repackage it for next month. But basically, all of these items that are typically upgrades in the design center, they're just going to get included. So it doesn't matter what the dollar value ends up being. So it can vary. Obviously, the bigger the house and the more bathrooms they have and the more square footage, the more value this is going to have. plus $10,000 their way. So they can either use that for structural options, more design upgrades, a lot premium, or they could combine that with the $20,000 lender incentive, up to obviously the maximum contributions, and use that to buy down the rate or closing cost. I am also pre-selling for the next 2 weeks or so our brand new Ridge Crossing community. Has anyone heard about that one? It's over in Waxahachie. So backing up Bridgewater, I have 50-foot lots and then just one 70-foot and one 80-foot, and that's it. We won't have any more 70s and 80s. But if you have a client that's looking for a larger lot, Ridge Crossing has 70 by 140-foot lots up to half-acre lots. It's a great community. It's brand new. It's a little more of a pocket community, so this is the first phase. And so I have some information. Prices start at $499.9. Great pricing on those size lots. And we do have inventory that's currently under construction that will be ready by the end of the year. Being in pre-sale, we're offering some great pre-sale incentives, $30,000. So in addition to our in-house lender incentives. So great opportunity for your buyers. If you have anyone looking over there, you can reach out to me.
So wait a minute, $30,000 in builder incentives plus 20,000
Correct.
on a 400,000, on a 500,000.
Say that again.
That's 10%.
I let it go. Was there 50,000 that you just said there?
30,000
Yes.
in builder incentives and 20,000 in lender incentives. That's 10% of the house price.
Correct.
And that was on just Bridgewater or?
That's the Ridge Crossing. That's
That's
our
Ridge
pre-sale
Crossing.
opportunity on the 70-foot lots over there. So
Sorry, that's what I thought I heard her say. I was like, holy crap, that's a lot of money.
maybe I need to repackage it. Same 10%.
Yeah, that's huge.
So, really great opportunity there. We do have another sales rep that'll be taking over that community around July 7. We're doing sneak peeks of the model. It's not open to the public yet, but if you'd like to come over there, it's by appointment, and I've been sending my sales associate over there on Saturdays, like 12 to 5 to kind of hang out there. So you can get in there and take a look around. It should be furnished. I think they're going to start furnishing it around July 6th and then open July 7th. So I have a very small window to try and sell something out there, but I would love to work with you and your buyers if you guys have someone who's interested in that. And I'll just leave this little packet. I only brought one of them, but my cards, those cookies are for me, and my sticker and my contact information is on there. So feel free to reach out, and I can always email you any of this contact.
Kevin,
Where's Edge Crossing?
Ridge Crossing, it's over, if you take 287 east, it's right before you get to I-35. It's a Villa Road. You take a right, and it's down on the right.
Okay.
And then what's the build time on, like, I know you said you're pre-selling, so where are you thinking completion on?
6 to 7 months would be
From contract?
from
or-
contract.
Okay.
Yeah. So any contracts written now, we would say to have a January completion.
Okay.
if you guys haven't been over to Develop Park and seen some of these houses, remember a couple weeks ago when I showed those people 30 houses in 3 days, I showed all these houses and they're fantastic.
Yes, classic. So 13-foot ceilings, long windows, 8-foot doors, very nice higher end finish out. If you have those buyers looking for the smaller houses that are really nicely done.
And their construction crew is amazing and excellent communication.
Thank you. She
Yeah.
has a buyer with us.
Hey,
Going through the build process. Yeah, so
So-
if you have any questions.
We actually just, our model that's going up in Ridge Crossing is a brand new plan for Highland in the Artisan series, which is what I'm selling. And it's a 2,800 square foot, 1-story. All of the homes either have 3-car garages or the opportunity to add a 3rd car garage, which I'm very limited in Bridgewater for that. But it is it has 16-foot cathedral ceilings in the family room in this 1-story in an Artisan product. It is gorgeous. So the model shows really well, and it's not even furnished yet. So
That's Ridge Crossing.
that's a Ridge
Ridge
Crossing.
Crossing.
Mhm.
well, hey, everybody say thank you to Highland for bringing breakfast this morning. Oh,
These are cute.
Be on my name all the time when I find products.
You should, absolutely.
That's not anything that's out there for Shawnette.
And remember, if you ever need social media content, you're welcome to come in the models, but if I were you, I would shoot the inventory homes because you can make money on those right now, right? And you don't have to say, call Ginger, say, call me, and then you guys get with us and go, what are the answers to these questions?
Thank you.
Smart.
Thank you, ladies, thank you
All right,
for so much.
thank you.
We'll see y'all in the fall.
Okay, sounds good. Have a great meeting.
Go see Highland Homes. Okay. Just a couple things that I need to kind of hit just so that everybody remembers this stuff. I've got several announcements before we get to the video today. So a good rule of thumb is if you've got a question about something, hit Slack, hit the guides channel first. And then if you don't get an answer that you like or that you could live with, call one of the subject matter experts, which those links are in Quick Links and on the backside, Quick Links in Slack and on the backside. And then third, you can always reach out to Jimmy and I, but I would say that that's always third because, I've talked to several people this week and I don't mind answering questions. I don't mind at all, but you may get a much better answer from Jana Seal, who's done tons of real estate, or Clarissa Bush, or Patty Smith. You will get or Maria Gonzalez, or I go all the way around. Okay. So there's a lot of functionality in the Slack channels. Please use the guides channel. To that end, I'm leaving town. And I'm going to be on a beach. I'm going to have my feet in the sand and a big margarita in my hand. You don't want to talk to me when I'm like that. Okay? So I'm headed out this Friday, and I'll be gone until the following Tuesday. I will be monitoring Slack. I promise if you put a question on Slack, and if it's something that I know something about, I will answer you. Okay? So will Jimmy. So will Janet. So will everyone. So please use the Slack channels first. Okay. Part-time agents. If you are a part-time agent, non-full-time, you should have received your new independent contractor agreement that outlines the new terms. Please sign those. Number two, all of the forms that you need are now on the back sides. Underneath productivity, there's a tab that says part-time agents. If you go over there, it'll show you everything you need, and I've linked everything so that the forms are there for you. So that should be good for everybody. Big announcement. Holly has been on my butt for this. So Holly, thank you. Oh, you're over here. The new listing and buyer presentations are live. Fully customizable. Every page is customizable now. And I will link those in the Slack follow-up today, and it will also be in the Sunday night email. Okay. So every page is customizable, except, okay, the only way I could make this work is on the backside when you go to the listing presentation. Every form, when you go to it, will take you to a Canva. You have to copy it to your Canva, and then it's fully editable, okay? But when you hit the first link, it's not editable at all. You with me? Okay, so on the backside, every form except the ones that say Emma Portman, you've everybody seen those forms that say Emma Portman? Well, now some of them have a picture of Jamie, and it's got Emma Portman there. Those forms are not editable there. They're just PDFs, okay? So if you see a PDF, just hit the buyer presentation at the top, and it'll take you to the Canva, and then you can copy, and then you can edit. Okay.
Copy and paste it into your own.
Mhm.
You can't download it and.
You can
Okay.
download it, but it's not. But everything on that thing, when you get to that link, it is not editable, and it just says Emma Portman on everything. Okay. So if you hit File, make a copy, and the instructions.
Gotcha.
The instructions are at the top of the page.
Yeah.
So file, make a copy, and when you make the copy, then it should be completely editable. If you run into a problem, Slack me, text me, and I'll see what I can do. But I've been working every day with Liz this week trying to get all this done to unveil today. So Town Hall is tomorrow at Bowl Lounge, which is 941 West Vickery. Rachel sent out a reminder this morning to your 6th Ave email. Please respond if you're going to make it or not. We're trying to get a head count. So you can either go to the event on your calendar and say, yes, I'm going to be there, or you can reply to Rachel's email and does the same thing. Next week, no meetings. Don't come up here on July the 3rd because nobody will be here. All right. So no meetings next week. 2 weeks, Sean Russell will be here with First United Bank. Oh, there's something new. Your dues are due in 4 days.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone who's paid. If you haven't paid your dues, The links are in the email that I sent a while ago because I sent it Sunday night, but I sent it to myself and didn't send it to y'all. So there's a new email for you in your inbox. The links are for Greater Fort Worth and a couple of agents that are with MetroText. The link is there. Go into your account, make sure that you've either got auto turned on or that your dues will be paid when they come due this Sunday, because they will. And then while I'm on vacation, Greater Fort Worth and MetroText are going to email me and say, hey, Patty Smith didn't pay her dues. We're going to turn your MLS off in 2 days if you don't get it paid. And then I got to text you from Mexico with a drink in my hand and my toes in the sand. It's a big ordeal. Okay. Big announcement. Miss Clarissa Bush has agreed that she's going to help me mentor 100 Days to Greatness in the fall. So there will be a sale on 100 Days to Greatness for everybody that's a new agent that hasn't done a lot of real estate. Even when I took this class, I've been in the business 4 years. And I took the class and it taught me a different way of doing things. So I want to encourage you. If you've been in, you could be in the business 7 years. Maria Gonzalez took the class last year and you've been in the business 9, 10? 8. Okay. So it's so good. It's great information. It's a bachelor's degree in real estate. Carissa's going to help me mentor that this summer or this fall. Buffini will be putting the program on sale in mid-August. I was planning to start it mid-August, but I want to wait till everybody can get the discount. So we'll probably start it like a week later, 2 weeks later. As soon as when I see the discount come through, I'll let you know. Have people sign up. You'll need to do it pretty quick. The way that works is you pay the fee and you pay the shipping. And then on your first 2 closings after you start the program, we give you 50% of the program cost back on your closing. So if the program costs $300, we give you $150 on your first closing, $150 on your second closing. The program is free to you, basically. All you're paying for is shipping. So, again, take 100 Days to Greatness, great idea. ABR is still free. Please go get it if you want it. Rechat videos. Some of those are not shareable and not on the YouTube channel, especially the ones that deal with marketing and the transaction. So if you need those access to those classes we did with Rechat, let me know and I'll get you the link. Continued prayers for Phil. We've had some setbacks in the last 2 weeks. Our pull and outdoor guy, but he's still there. He's still waiting on a heart, but continued prayers for him. Call Jimmy with all pull and outdoor leads. Have you seen the new 6th Ave branded note cards? The links are in your email that I sent you a while ago. And Mariah had asked about name badges. And I put that on my calendar like 4 months ago, and then we got busy. And so I haven't done it. If anybody would like to get a name badge like this one or something similar, text me, slide me something. Let me know that you're interested so that I can put a list together, and then I'll go get those. In the email that I sent you a while ago are 4 chances or 5 chances to sign up for the forms class from different providers. A couple of them are the Baker firm. One of them is J.C. Johnson with Old Republic. The one we're going to watch right now is from TAR. So this is their lead counsel and second counsel. And I'm just going to tell you, it took me 3 times watching this video to get what they were trying to tell me because the dates kind of get all mixed up. So if you're taking notes, great. If you're not, I'm going to encourage you to go back and watch this video again after the class. So it took, like I say, it took 3 times for me to get this. I'm also taking a broker training this afternoon. It's a 2-hour training that I've got to go through. So that'll be fun. But I encourage you to listen to different people, go to different sources, do these free webinars. Everybody's doing a free Zoom or webinar or in person, whatever floats your boat over the next couple of weeks. I've seen one person, somebody this morning sent me an email. Hey, we're having a class on the forums July 29th. Well, that seems a little late, but you know, that's why we haven't done any training on this to this point, is because they keep modifying them. I was watching this class last week, and they modified the forms an hour after the class. Yes. So we're still in limbo, but we're going to get the basics of what they're trying to tell us here, and then we'll go from there. Okay. So the big things that we're going to change, one thing that Jana and Patty and I were talking about earlier, TREC is not going to modify any forms. Listen to me, TREC, not TAR, TREC, which is your 1 to 4 family contract. Those kind of things will not be modified before January 1st. That's the earliest that they are allowed to do it or able to do it or whatever. The broker lawyer committee is meeting weekly to get these changes that are going into place on the contracts and stuff, but those contracts will not change before the first of the year. However, all of our TAR forms, which is already representation forms, those are the ones that are changing. There's now a short form. There's a long form. There's all kinds of different ways that we can do this. So it's going to be really convoluted and everybody's going to be confused. It's okay. That's why I'm saying go to 2 or 3 of these things and get them from different sources. You'll pick up something every single time. Okay. Any questions? Anybody want to comment and yell at me?
Has anybody seen any good script trainings on how to present this? Because I think that's probably like understanding the form. Yeah, we're going to figure all that out. It's a have-to situation. But how we talk about these to our clients, that's conversations that have already begun.
It's so awkward.
I nominate you to
my
come up with a
words
script because you're good.
I was like,
Hear this stuff, and I just want to let you know, and it's really important to make the buyer take it. We all take less, like that's been my whole, that I am like fumbling over my words, and I'm like, and they're just looking at me like, what the hell are you talking about? Because they haven't even heard anything.
Yeah, my seller asked me on my last one, and I just basically was like, we're listing now. Not a lot is changing.
Yeah.
There are things that are changing, but things are changing every day. And so for now, what I've just said is, you know, a lot of these lawsuits are happening in states that are not Texas. We have our representation forms. If you have questions about that, let's talk it through. And this is why it's important to pay a buyer.
I really have just told my seller to just.
right. You need to get out.
You know, you have somebody that, you know, can basically vet the buyer and lead them and allow, you know, lead the buyer through emotional decisions and things like that. I haven't had a lot of pushback from sellers. The buyer conversation's a little bit weird.
Right.
It's a little bit weird. It's kind of like we can negotiate the commission into that, but I've just told them, if we come upon a house, yeah, there is no commission offered, we'll go back to the drawing board, but that may be wrong because of the.
See, and I think that's more where we need to concentrate our script
Yeah.
practices on the buy side, because as listing agents, we've been negotiating commission forever. So that's not a big deal, but really having that conversation with the buyers is going to be all new.
Yeah.
Well, I have a conversation with a buyer from California, so I think, you know, things there are so different. And when he asked me point blank, he was like, what is your fee? And I said, per the representation form, you are going to sign 98%. In Texas, a lot of sellers are still offering that fee. Some are not. If we come across homes that are not offering that fee, that will be a conversation that we have at that time. So that, you know, going in, this is something we're going to either have to consider negotiating, or it's something that you're going to have to potentially pay for.
I will say this, that there are brokerages that long since, ever since I've been an agent, have always sent their buyer rep agreement in with their offer.
Yeah.
And I think it's best practice at this point because to me, and this is what Patty and I were just talking about, I feel like we're negotiating that buyer's commission all the way up to the point of contract. So why wouldn't you submit your rep agreement and just negotiate it while including the offer and including, well, what are you offering? You know, that's going to be a determining factor for like, if you're going to lowball me, then, you know, we're going to talk differently about the amount of commission that I'm paying versus if you give me a great offer, then, you know, I just think there's variables in there. Point being made that a buyer's rep agreement submitted with the contract, and then now my seller has the ability to counter back and see, you know, real numbers in front of them. So I just, the best practice.
Well,
for
I'm
me would be
wondering,
to start getting in the habit.
on the seller side, if there's going to be value in not submitting, but maybe putting in, that's, and again, this is the problem, is we don't know, is putting my listing agreement in the transaction desk, at least with that page that says, this is what we've agreed to offer. Don't ask me to break my listing.
Did you just say we can't?
So
we
you
just
cannot,
don't
you
do that.
cannot do that. You can't do it. You can't put it in property or description. And we were just talking about like an offer guideline sheet. We're probably not going to be able to do that either. So we talked about this weekend at a retreat I was with some agents. And the challenge is going to be, how are we going, when the MLS removes the commission that we can't see it, are you going to reach out to that agent before you go, knowing your buyer, knowing what your buyer rep is, reach out to that agent before you go to say, hey, before I show your house, paying a commission. If they say no, do you go show that? Do you say, buyer, we can go show the house, but we're going to be negotiating my commission into this deal before they fall in love with the house? So our challenge will be, after this all figures out, is how much extra work we're going to have to do to get that agent to call me back so I can go show houses. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
This
Yeah.
will even opening us up to significantly more lawsuits because now you're running into disclosure issues.
Well,
In my
so
opinion,
California implemented a blank in their MLS that says what the seller concessions will be offered.
Oh, there you go.
So, I mean, like, I'll just be quiet.
Well, and also,
But basically, like, it's just going to be very economical when it's a $400,000 house and
And
there's
it's a-
$12,000
Right.
worth of concession.
well, and that's,
So that's how California.
yeah,
does it.
and that's.
It's just saying that the seller will offer upfront this.
Okay, so that allows negotiation. So then, like what you said, if I'm a listing agent and my client gets a $400,000 offer, there will be a $12,000 concession that goes to the buyer's agent. But if I get a $350,000 offer, it might be negotiated instead of a percent,
But
and it goes as a concession instead of a
the
fee.
good thing about doing it that way, is that is straight from the seller. That is not the listing broker issuing that,
Mhm.
is not that compensation. That is coming directly from the seller's mouth.
Well, maybe you could set up an if this, then that
Right.
on your showing time or broker bay.
That's what I was.
And as soon as you get a showing notification, then you could have it immediately text that agent and say, hey, we're offering 3% buyer's agent commission.
I think that's gonna be strong communication, but all the more important to get your buyer's rep agreement in place before you ever start showing. Because you need to have that negotiation conversation
Yeah.
and understand where your buyer sits and what they're willing to pay and not willing to pay before you ever start showing. Then you know how to respond when you get that if or that text from the listing agent. Okay, this is what they're willing to do. How do you feel about that? And what are you comfortable with?
And yeah, do you think that there was I saw something out where it was YouTube or whatever, they were talking about that because it's going to be required to have the buyer's rep in August. I mean, I've always had one, so I don't do it. It's not an issue for me. But there was talk that if you didn't have it, you could be in violation and be fined
Mhm.
as an agent. So that.
And
I mean,
me
it's
too.
It's gonna change it's gonna change the entire environment. You won't be going and showing anybody.
But
Buyers are going to have.
But that's why we're going to look at this video in just a minute, because they're the short form. There's a thing that they're calling showing services or touring. And so you could and I knew a guy 20 years ago in Remax Las Colinas. He would not take clients out without a buyer's representation agreement. And he would say, I will take you out for a day of showing and you will pay me $250. That's going to be an option. Okay. So there's all kinds of options that they're going to talk about in here. You'll see them. That's why I want you to see this. And thank you, ladies, so much for the insight and intellect that you guys have already put into this. The simple fact is we just don't know how it's going to pan out.
Right.
And we're all going to be playing by the seat of our pants come August 24th. And hopefully that's 2 months. We got 2 months to figure this out. But hopefully things will come down from TAR, from TREC, from NAR, that we will be able to say, this is how we're going to proceed as qualified, experienced, professional realtors. So let's watch the video and then we'll have more discussion afterwards, okay?
Hit record if that's not happening already. Hello, Texas Realtors. I am Lori Levy, your Vice President of Legal Affairs and General Counsel.
And I am David Jones, Deputy General Counsel with Texas Realtors.
Today, we're going to walk through many of the changes coming next week to the Texas Realtors forms. First, let me get the preliminaries out of the way. We are recording this webinar and it will be posted on our website for future viewing. We are not answering questions today, but please ask your questions in the Q&A field and we will review those questions. We will post FAQs for all questions received, and be sure to check back to texasrealestate.com for the video, for FAQs, other videos, and other updates as well. Moving to slide 2, let's talk a little bit about the background, why we're having this webinar today, why we are changing our forms at this time. So the reason for the forms change. On March 15th of this year, NAR announced a settlement agreement in the Sitzer Burnett case. This was a class action
I'm working on it.
antitrust lawsuit brought back in 2019.
I'm working on it.
by
Hang on.
home sellers in Missouri who claimed that broker commissions were inflated based on the MLS offer of cooperative compensation. If you recall, a jury found NAR and the other defendants liable, at which point in time numerous copycat lawsuits were filed across the country, including here in Texas. NAR and the other defendants have agreed to settle this lawsuit. This settlement includes numerous parties, associations, MLSs, and members, and requires NAR to make changes to its MLS rules and change the way buyer broker compensation is paid in real estate transactions. The court has granted preliminary approval of the settlement, which started the clock ticking for parties to file necessary paperwork and for associations and MLSs to change their rules and forms. While the court has set November 26, 2024 as the date to hold a hearing regarding final approval of the settlement, August 17th is the date by which the MLSs must update their rules regarding buyer broker compensation. In May, NAR updated the MLS rules to bring MLSs in compliance with the terms of the settlement agreement. Your local MLS will be making these changes by August 17th. MLS rules now include requirements for disclosures and written agreements, which is what the settlement agreement requires. I'm going to briefly review those here so that you know the why behind our forms update. First of all, listing brokers must disclose to sellers and obtain seller approval for any payment or offer of payment that the listing broker or seller will make to another broker acting for buyers. This disclosure must be in writing and provided in advance of any payment or agreement to pay, and must specify the amount or rate of any such payment. MLS participants must disclose to sellers and buyers that broker commissions are not set by law and are fully negotiable. This disclosure must be contained in listing agreements and buyer representation agreements. MLS participants working with a buyer must have a written agreement before the buyer tours any home. So let's break down that requirement just a little bit. Working with a buyer, what does that mean? This is basically any agent who is not considered to be working with a seller. While no agreement would be required by a listing agent holding an open house, or by a listing agent providing an unrepresented buyer access to a house they have listed, a written agreement would be required for any agent not working on behalf of the seller that opens that home for the buyer. Touring a home means when the buyer and the MLS participant enter the house. This includes when the MLS participant enters the home to provide a live virtual tour to a buyer, even if that buyer is not physically present. Now, while the settlement agreement and the MLS rules may use the word tour or touring, we say showing. So anytime we talk about a showing of a home, we're talking about touring for purposes of the settlement agreement. And then home means a residential property consisting of not less than one nor more than 4 residential dwelling units. So that is in line with our TREC residential 1 to 4 family contracts. The settlement also requires the written agreement with the buyer to contain 3 specific provisions. They are: the agreement must disclose the amount or rate of compensation the realtor will receive and how this amount will be determined. The amount of compensation reflected in the agreement must be objectively ascertainable and may not be open-ended. For example, it can't say compensation will be whatever amount seller is offering. And finally, the realtor may not receive compensation for brokerage services from any source that exceeds the amount or rate agreed to in that agreement. So lots of changes coming to the representation agreement. On the next slide, I just want to highlight the work that we have done and are doing. We have provided representation forms to our members for many years. As a result of this settlement, we needed to update many forms and create new ones. A broker residential forms task force was created, including brokers representing different size firms and geography. This task force met in person over a few months and updated 16 forms and added 3 new ones. Now, what is the timeline that we're working under here? And where can you find the forms? Red lines of the forms are posted right now on the adopted forms page of the Texas Realtors website. The forms will be available on June 24th in zip forms and all other Texas Realtors forms providers. You'll be able to download them from our website as well as access them through zip forms or any licensed forms provider. The updated forms replace the previous versions, so all members will be using the updated forms moving forward. You are required to use the updated forms once they are posted on June 24th. The updated and new forms can be used prior to your MLS updating its rules and fields to comply with the MLS rules. You can still adhere to the current MLS rule regarding cooperative compensation offered on the MLS even while using our updated form. So we're going to have our forms out there. They're ready to be used. They can be used even if your MLS has not yet updated its rules and removed cooperative compensation, which they will do by August 17th. So here's a question that we receive many times. We've received it already. What if your client signed a representation agreement, whether a listing agreement or a buyer's rep agreement, on the previous pre-June 24 version, one that does not meet the requirements of the settlement? Do you need to have them sign a new agreement? Here's the answer. If your client signed a pre-June 24th representation agreement with you, and that client has entered into a sales contract to purchase or sell a home prior to August 17th, you do not need to update your representation agreement. On the other hand,
I'm going to turn the mic back on just for a second so they can hear me online. If you have entered into a contract with a buyer, they do not have to sign this update. If you're working with a buyer and you're not showing houses, you have to use this new form. This amendment, the 2701, must be used immediately as of 2 days ago. Okay? So, any questions?
If you're not in contract, you're just still showing houses.
If you are in contract and you are not going to close by August the 17th, you must file and sign this document, okay? But if you're closing before August 17th, so if you've got a closing in June or July, you're fine. The forms are fine. If you've got a new build and you're closing in November, you got to get a new amendment.
What if you're getting a new buyer?
A new buyer. The new forms are already posted. They came out on Monday. Everybody's zip forms, anything that you're using should have these new forms there. And they've taken the place of the old ones. The old ones are not available anymore. So everybody that has a buyer right now that you're showing houses, but y'all are not in contract, you have to use this. Okay.
Can we do it now?
Yeah, absolutely. It is now. It is now. You are to use this form now to get an amendment to the representation agreement now. If you're working with a buyer and you're not in contract closing by August the 17th. That's what took me 3 times to figure out watching this video, because it's confusing. And you can text me later or slack me later, and we'll talk about it there. Okay, back. Okay, well, I try to do my homework. Now, if I can get this thing to play it.
Basically, if you're under contract with any buyer and you have your buyer's rep signed,
And you're closing by August, by the 17th of August, you don't need this amendment. Yes, ma'am?
Okay, so new buyer, you said just this one, not.
No. The new buyer representation form. This is the amendment. This amends your current buyer's representation agreement. There is 2 new forms called the long form and the short form that they'll go over in a minute. This amendment only modifies something that's already in place, that you're not under contract with the buyer. So I've got like 7 buyers that I'm working with. I got to go get 7 amendments. Okay. All right. Now, if I can get this thing to play again, we'll be good.
You would be a great person to give us a script.
Yeah. If your client signed a pre-June 24th representation agreement with you, and that client has not entered into a sales contract to purchase or sell a home prior to August 17th, those representation agreements will need to be updated. One option is to enter into a new post-June 24th agreement. The easier option is to use a new form that we just created. It's on the screen. TXR 2701 Amendment to Representation Agreement. This form can be used with both listing and buyer tenant representation agreements to allow brokers under a current representation agreement, a pre-June 24th representation agreement, to meet the requirements of the NAR settlement. It includes the required disclosures and authorizations that are required beginning August 17th, and that is all it does. It brings our current pre-June 24th agreements in line with the August 17th requirements. This form is temporary and will be pulled down at the appropriate time. It's being provided as an easy button for compliance with the new rules. So now we're going to talk about some of the other updates and new forms. We don't have time to hit all forms today, so we are highlighting the ones that have the most impact. And I'll turn it over to David to get us started.
Okay, thank you, Lori. Let's talk about the listing.
The 2701 amends the listing agreement and the buyer's representation agreement for everyone that doesn't have a contract closing by August the
So
17th.
there's just one amendment for both, regardless if you're a listing or a buyer.
Correct.
It's the same-
2701 goes to every listing that you have right now that's not under contract, every buyer that you have that's not under contract, closing either one of those by August the 17th. The 2701 is the amendment. Yes, Maria?
It is an amendment.
It is an amendment to your listing representation agreement and an amendment to your buyer's representation agreement.
Based on how you fill it out. You have the option to amend the listing with it. You have the option to amend the buyer agreement. Click back to that form.
So, yeah, I just pulled it out, and that's, I think that's what it is that we're not familiar with it, so we don't know what it says.
It's new.
Yeah, it's new, so I'm looking at, there's another one at 1505, which I was.
We're gonna hit in a minute.
Okay.
2701. So the options are, okay, if you've got a buyer, you've got a listing, not under contract and not closing now, it's still possible you could get your listing under contract and close it by August 17th and not have to do anything, right?
So are you saying, are you suggesting?
I'm saying that forms are there for you to use. But
Okay.
if you get to, mid-July and you don't have a contract on your listing, you got to do something because you're not going to close by August 17th.
But the listing agreement, if I'm getting one signed today.
The new listing agreement's already there.
The new listing agreement.
The new buyer reps agreements are there. The new listing agreements are there.
How do we
Okay.
know if they're new or right? Because I use them to reach out. Okay.
They're supposed to completely be renovated at this point with every provider. They're supposed to come out the 24th. And if you ever in doubt, the bottom left-hand corner has the date that form came out, and it'll say 6/24/24. Okay? So if you get to a buyer rep agreement somewhere and it doesn't say 6/24/24, red flag, need to go look someplace else. Okay? Everybody with me? Okay. Back to the video. Now we're going to get to, this is, okay. So alternatively to everything that we've just talked about, if you've got a buyer that you're showing houses to, if you've got a listing that you're about to take or a listing that you already have in place, you can do the amendment. It's a short form. It's one piece of paper, and you amend your current representation agreement. Or you can throw it away and get a new listing, exclusive right to sell, or the new buyer rep agreement. You can do that too. They've given you two different ways to do this. You can amend what's there, or you can start new. Does the same thing. The amendment makes the old contracts fall in line with the new contracts, the new agreements. Excuse me.
I'm following you.
Everybody's got their head on. Okay. That it took me 3 times to get that.
Hey, I'm remedial all the way, so you gotta do it.
Yeah,
6 times.
yeah.
Yeah.
Let's do
So-
it that way.
But so far, everybody's keeping up for now, because when the guy starts talking, he mistalked like 6 times, and I had to really think about what he was saying to get it. So let's go there. I'm going to mute you guys online again, and then I'll start the video, trying to keep it so it doesn't echo on you.
Agreements. So we have several listing agreements that are impacted by these changes. We've got 1101, which is our residential real estate listing agreement, exclusive right to sell. 1102, residential real estate listing agreement, exclusive right to lease. and 1201, the Farm and Ranch Real Estate Listing Agreement exclusive right to sell. And we have made pretty much identical changes to all three of these listing agreements. So first up is paragraph 5. That is the broker compensation paragraph. We added the required disclosure that broker compensation is not set by law and is fully negotiable. We separated the broker's fee into two options. The seller and broker can negotiate whether the seller will pay the listing broker an amount that includes compensation to a buyer's broker, as paragraph 5A. The listing broker would be responsible for paying the buyer's broker from their fee. That's similar to how compensation on the MLS works currently. Or the seller will pay the listing broker only. That is option 5B. In the current listing agreement, you could accomplish the same result by inserting 0 into the buyer's broker compensation paragraph. But by having these separate paragraphs A and B, we feel it adds tremendously to the transparency that compensating the buyer's broker is optional for the seller. Currently, compensation to a buyer's broker is contained in paragraph 8. We moved the cooperative compensation provisions to paragraph 5, where the broker's fee is inserted. We felt that the broker's fee and compensation to a buyer's broker should be discussed with the client at the same time. It only makes sense that these two provisions be in the same place. We also removed references to MLS participants versus non-MLS participants, since compensation will no longer be permitted on an MLS at all. Currently, paragraph 8, or the new version of paragraph 8, has the word reserved now. It's just a placeholder. We did not want to have to renumber all the remaining paragraphs once we remove the cooperative compensation provisions from 8 and moved them up to paragraph 5. And because the practice of sharing commission is changing, we added a note to inform the seller that a buyer may ask for seller to contribute an amount towards buyer's expenses, including broker fees or other closing costs. And we refer you to paragraph 11. In paragraph 11, we added a new subparagraph F to allow the seller to authorize the listing broker to share that the seller will consider contributing an amount towards buyer's expenses. Note that checking does authorize here does not obligate the seller to pay any specific amount. The seller still has sole discretion to negotiate payment of buyer's expenses with the buyer once offers start coming in. We added these changes because the removal of the MLS offer of compensation, where you currently communicate about payment of buyer's broker commission, means that buyers may be asking sellers to pay their buyer broker fees directly now. As a listing agent, you need to have that conversation with your seller. One common question we are getting: what goes in the blank lines for paragraph 5A1B and 5B1B?
Okay, I'm pausing just for a second. We have questions here.
So if my interpretation in paragraph 11, if you're saying seller does authorize broker to share, doesn't that then give us the authorization to like share it in offer instructions, not posting it on MLS, but for instance, if you book a showing and I see, oh, you're going to see mine, I can immediately text you.
Absolutely.
That's what
So
you're
that-
saying in the broker pay.
I feel like that is
That's exactly.
our way.
Yes,
of
this is
communicating.
this is the way to communicate. This right here. Okay, so he's about to talk about this. He's talking about these two blanks in B, 5A1B. There's a big blank here, and he's just going to tell you there's many ways that you can work out compensation. That you could say that you're paying an exact dollar figure, or that you're taking their boat in payment for this. They've left it open. Okay, they've left it open. Everything that we're doing here, 5A1, A and B, this is exactly how we've always done it.
Is this, not that I did it, but is like all the sub agents, MLS participants, non-MLS, all of that is gone?
It will be gone August
It's all
17th.
gone. Okay.
August 17th. We haven't done sub-agency in Texas since I've been a realtor.
Okay,
Okay, so people that put 3% down there, they're not looking at it or not thinking about it.
Okay.
It should be 0 on the sub-agency forever and ever and ever, okay? But these right here, this is the way that we've always done it. This is the new way that the settlement makes us do it. This one right here, 5B, when earned and payable, this is broker's fee without compensation for other broker.
That's just listing broker.
This means that you are paying me. You're my seller, you're paying me, but you're not paying Taja. That's what you're agreeing to. And then me, the listing agent, I have to have the conversation of, oh, so you want to exclude 90% of the agents out there that want to bring a buyer to see you.
I guarantee you.
There'll be somebody.
So you're either gonna fill out A or B.
You're going to fill out, this is all moved up from paragraph 8 where we used to do all of that compensation stuff. Everything is now moved to 5. You're either going to do, which is why they blocked them off. You're either going to do 5A, 1, and then you're going to fill out 2. If from amount stated in 5A1 above, broker will pay the other broker the following fees, just like we've always done. Exactly the same. Okay? Not confusing. The confusing part is when you have to come down here with the seller that's digging his heels in, being a horse's butt, and he's not going to pay anything. That's when you're going to say, are you sure that you want to have that, to offer that to no one?
I'm not gonna say that I hate A2 because I don't, because I feel like
A2? Well,
no. Yeah, A2. I think that's actually, I sort of like that because I think there's a lot of agents. I do think there's poor representation.
Absolutely.
For people who have not known.
But you have to fill out 1 to fill out 2.
Yeah, no, I like that.
Okay.
Which would be the section B. That's not saying that they won't. It's saying that maybe they'll make that decision in the future with an offer that comes in.
Well, no.
No.
You're saying, this is saying the seller is only paying me.
Right. But they said earlier that they could pay them separately to
Yeah,
where
absolutely.
they could still pay the buyer's agent, pay the seller separately, and not go through the listing agent to the buyer.
There could
So
be
that's-
concessions
That's
Yeah,
to the
11.
buyer.
So you could essentially have B. You could essentially do 5B, I'm not paying, and then have 16,000 in 11.
Yeah,
You could do it that way.
you could.
But you're
It's the
essentially
same
saying
thing. It's the same thing we've always done. We're moving money from A to B.
But my whole question about this section 5B is, okay, so you're obviously going to deal with this quite a bit, where it's like, well, no, I'm not paying it. And in an aggressive seller's market, you can probably get away with that. Right now, you're not going to be able to get away with that because, like, okay, good luck with your house sitting there. But is there an amendment to that where you go back and amend? Okay, now I'll pay because I've been sitting on the
That
market.
would be the
Right now, it would be 2701,
Okay.
but
listing agreement.
that is going away. 2701 is only here temporarily.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
Just until we get everybody moved to the new listing agreement, new buyer rep agreements. Once that occurs, which I would imagine they'll probably take it away by the end of August. They might give it a little time after the 17th, but I wouldn't count on it. So, but, somebody will have a 2701. Okay. So, but I think that this is really big. This is where everything changes because of the settlement. Okay. So we're going to move on now because I don't want to keep you guys too late.
I gotta clarify one more thing now while we're on this topic. If you put a dollar amount in your listing agreement that you're willing to pay the buyer's agent 3%, but they send in their buyer's rep agreement and they have an agreement for 2.5%, then do you still have to pay them the 3%?
No, because they can't accept more than what is in their buyer rep agreement.
Okay, so one more reason why their buyer rep agreement ought to accompany the contract.
Okay.
How can it not now?
Exactly.
Well, that's something that they're going to have to figure out. But let's move forward. I don't want to keep you guys
The
too late.
blank space allow.
Yep. Go ahead.
On the new buyer's rep, you know how they always talk about the incentives that the new builds
Uh-huh.
offer us?
Uh-huh.
Is there a way to add that in?
They're going to show you that, but no, there's no way to add in every single dollar you get from a builder. Any kind of bonus you get from any seller has to be agreed to by the buyer in writing now.
The buyer has to say it's okay for you to have it.
So now
Yeah.
we're going to get vacation.
So if you go to a builder and you get the $5,000 bonus that Highland Homes is offering,
Yeah.
okay, that's not in your buyer's rep agreement that you can get $5,000, not all builder incentives. That doesn't work. That doesn't work.
And you can't amend it.
You can amend it. There is going, they show you, there's an amendment where you can go back to the buyer and say, hey, I'm so glad that we bought this Highland home. The builder is offering a $5,000 bonus to me. And then the buyer is going to say, I want half.
That's exactly what they're gonna do. They're gonna say, well, just take, well, can they just take
I'm
money?
paying for it, that should be mine.
Uh-huh.
That's
I
exactly.
mean, you're right. And
That's
you're right,
exactly
though.
what's going to happen. And I,
Builders are gonna not have to pay anymore.
So- so
They're
maybe
gonna-
a script that we have up front with our buyers at our buyer consultation is, hey, I know that you're really interested in going out to see new builds. Occasionally, a builder will offer an incentive. They'll usually give you an incentive, like at the design center or in the lender department. If we use their lender, sometimes they're going to offer me an incentive to bring you to their unit. Are you going to be okay if they end up paying me like a $5,000 bonus? That's the
At
trick.
the same time that they're giving you.
Yes,
$20,000.
$50,000.
Exactly. Or,
That's how we get around that, because
that's
if,
not brilliant, I need.
because,
You need to.
if you go out with if you don't have that conversation up front, that I might get an incentive, I might get something, and you're going to get something, then you're going to have a problem when that builder says, oh, here's $5,000, and you have to disclose that.
One clarifying question, because you said that if it's not closing, if it's closing by August
17,
17th, I have a new bill that's closing in October.
you have to get all new forms. You have to do the amendment. The buyer representation agreement has to be amended. If it's not closing, if your listing or your buyer is not closing by August 17th, there must be the amendment 2701 in place. Or new forms. That's your option. 2701 to amend what's there, or new buyer rep, or new listing rep.
Don't want to sign it. They changed their mind and they don't want to sign it. They're up a creek. I mean,
The buyer, you have to sign, you have to. This is this, and you can tell them, if
Required by.
this is required by law. This is the settlement that's coming out of Missouri because one attorney got really, really greedy and got $35 million. One guy. Okay. That's what you can tell them. That's what I'm having a conversation with. All right. We got to move on, guys.
Allows for other
Lots to hit.
compensation arrangements that are different than the percentage and the flat fee that are already included. Other compensation arrangement could include a variable rate that the listing broker might charge. Parties can check either A or B or both, depending on their current compensation structure. And now I will turn it back over to Lori to get into sort of some of the addendum attached to listing agreements.
So on our next slide, you will see TXR 1412. We just talked about seller considering an amount to contribute toward buyer's closing costs, including compensation for a buyer's broker. So how do you navigate that once that conversation occurs? You can use seller's authorization to disclose and advertise certain information, TXR 1412. This form is not new. It was originally designed to be used as written authorization from the seller that the listing agent may disclose and or advertise certain information to prospective buyers, other brokers, and on the MLS. It can still be used for that purpose. We've updated it to make it clearer and intend for you all to use this as it was originally drafted to authorize the listing agent to disclose or advertise, for example, information regarding amounts seller would consider contributing toward buyer's expenses. Some MLSs may be adding a concessions field. Brokers can get seller's authorization to include a specific dollar amount in an MLS. This will obviously be subject to local MLS rules. So that is not a new form, but it may have a lot more importance for you now that these discussions are taking place off of the MLS. On the next slide, we have TXR 1404, which is the amendment to listing. We updated this form to provide specific provisions to amend the broker's fees paragraph in 1101 and 1201. This is where the seller and listing broker can agree to change the amount seller will pay the listing broker and or the amount, if any, listing broker will share with the buyer's broker. We added the required disclosure that broker compensation is not set by law and is fully negotiable. If you need to amend an older version of 1101, 1102, 1201, or 1201, a pre-June 24th version of those, you can use this new updated 1404. Use the catch-all paragraph on the amendment, and that's paragraph F at the bottom, if the specific paragraph in the listing agreement is no longer listed in the amendment. So there have been some changes that would impact how you normally use this form, but you can still use.
For a second, somebody asked a minute ago, how do we amend? This is the amendment to the listing. This is where it changes. Hey, I picked B in paragraph 5 on the listing, and I'm not paying another broker. I'm not paying a buyer's broker, buyer's agent. This is what amends that.
Oh, I've decided maybe I do want to do that.
Yep. After you've been on the market for 90 days, you have one showing.
Yep.
All of a sudden, hey, let's do 1404, because this amends what the listing did, the listing agreement did in 1101. By with me? Okay. And if you want to write down questions or text me questions, we can answer them at the end, because they start rolling pretty good here, and I'm trying not to stop it again. Okay.
We need a retreat and broken vote.
Use it going forward. Alternatively to updating a pre-June 24th listing agreement with this 1404, you can also execute a new version of the applicable listing agreement. And don't forget, we have 2701, the form to allow you to update your listing agreements to come into compliance with the new requirements. On the next slide, we have TXR 1417 representation disclosure. This form has actually been around for many years. Currently, a broker or their agent may use this form to inform another party to a transaction, or another license holder who represents another party to a transaction who the broker represents. This is a TREC requirement, although the information can be conveyed in writing or verbally. So use of this form has not been necessary and may not have been commonplace. We've updated this form so that now you can continue to use it as you were to comply with the TREC requirement of disclosure of who you represent, but also now to disclose to a consumer that the listing broker represents the seller of the residential property to be shown. We did this because a listing broker does not need a written agreement to provide access to an unrepresented buyer. And I'm talking about a listing broker or an agent in that listing firm. Other agents, non-listing firm agents, do now need a written agreement to show that home to a potential buyer. Now that there is an requirement for that agent working with the buyer to secure a written agreement with that buyer to show the home, a listing broker can now use this form to confirm to the buyer that the agent is working on behalf of the seller. It's a little bit confusing, but our goal here, as requested by brokers, was to have a document that the listing firm, an agent with the listing firm, can show to that buyer to ensure that the buyer understands that that agent represents the seller and is not acting on behalf of the buyer. They're acting on behalf of the seller when they show them that home. So with that, we're going to move on to buyer representation agreements, and I will turn it over to David.
Okay, so first up, let's talk about 1501, the Residential Buyer Tenant Representation Agreement. It's got a new name. We added on the label long form. That's because in a minute you'll hear about a new form, the short form buyer rep. So just to distinguish the two forms, we added long form to this agreement. Broker compensation is moved to paragraph 7, which is now at the top of page 2. And the language is updated to ensure broker is authorized to receive compensation in compliance with the settlement agreement. We added the required limitation that the broker is prohibited from receiving compensation for broker services from any source that exceeds the amount stated in the agreement. This requirement means that brokers must ensure any compensation they expect to receive for their efforts is reflected in the buyer tenant representation agreement where the client has agreed to that compensation. We added the required disclosure that broker compensation is not set by law and is fully negotiable. On the next slide, now this is an important update. Just today, we modified provisions in this agreement related to bonuses and other compensation in 1501. After discussions with the NAR legal staff, Texas Realtors determined that the provisions related to bonuses and other compensation in our buyer-tenant agreement did not satisfy the objectively ascertainable requirement in the NAR settlement. We understand that many of you have already taken a class on the updated forms and may have seen the previous version where there were blank lines for bonuses and other compensation. And we had to remove those lines. We would not have made this change at this time if we didn't feel it was absolutely necessary to protect our members and the association. So what we've done, we amended the language regarding bonuses and other compensation to make sure it is in compliance with the settlement. All compensation to a broker must be objectively ascertainable in this agreement. Therefore, we removed those blank lines and we included a note here in the representation agreement that the buyer will understand that a bonus or other compensation may be offered to the buyer's broker. And once your buyer is ready to submit an offer to purchase or lease a property for which there is a bonus or other compensation offered to you as a buyer's broker, you will need to use the amendment TXR 1505 to allow the buyer to authorize your receipt of that compensation. And we will check out 1505 in just a minute. On the next slide is our new form. TXR 1507 is Residential Buyer Tenant Representation Agreement short form. Okay, this came from an overwhelming member request. They wanted a more basic, much shorter buyer tenant representation agreement. This form is essentially two forms in one. It can be used to provide full services to a client where the broker assists the client in locating a property all the way to sitting down at the closing table. But it can also be used to provide showing services. Remember, the MLS changes require, if you're working with the buyer, you're not the listing broker. If you're working with the buyer, you have to get a written agreement with the buyer prior to touring a home. So again, we use the word showing here in Texas. So it's showing services where the broker agrees to only provide access to show property. The form includes the necessary provisions to comply with the recent NAR policy changes, but it has the flexibility to work with buyers and tenants that may not be ready to commit to a long-term relationship with an agent. The term or the duration of the agreement can be as short as 1 day, and the market area that the agreement applies to can be one property address. So this agreement has a lot of flexibility. A question that we're getting: what are my duties and responsibility if my client selects showing services on the buyer tenant representation agreement? Well, under the occupation code, license holders are required at minimum to answer the party's questions and present any offer to or from the party. This simply means that the agent is required to give the offer to the intended party. This requirement does not also require the agent to sit down and write out the offer or negotiate the terms for the buyer and seller. It's intended to make sure that the agent is not withholding any information, any material information. So if a client has an offer that they want you to give, yes, you would have to give it. If you receive an offer, you would have to then pass that offer along. Brokers are permitted under the law to agree on which services the broker will provide to their clients. For example, there are already limited services listing brokers, and there are referral agents that have agreed to provide only certain services to their clients. These brokers would still have to perform these services while meeting their legal and ethical duties. So on the next slide, we have the amendment. 1505, Amendment to Buyer Tenant Representation Agreement. We updated this form to include a specific paragraph to amend the broker obligation paragraph in the short form 1507. This is where, when you want to move from, let's say you start off initially with offering showing services with your client, but now the client is ready to use you to actually move forward and purchase, you can amend the agreement from showing services to full services. We've updated this form to specify changes to the broker's fee paragraph in both 1501 and 1507. Because of the limitation of the new policies that brokers prohibited from receiving compensation that exceeds the amount stated in the agreement, it was important to add the ability to amend the agreement if additional compensation is available and if the client and the broker agree to that additional compensation. This form now includes a separate paragraph to add that the client authorizes the broker to receive a bonus or other compensation. This will be more important now that as a buyer's broker, all compensation for brokerage services you receive has to be objectively ascertainable in the written agreement and has to be authorized by your client. So use this amendment to add compensation you're being offered if it's not included in the buyer representation agreement when signed. Note that a specific dollar amount is required, and that is the only thing that should be entered in the blank. This should be done both under the long and short versions of the buyer's representation agreement. So another question we get: if my buyer initially agrees to showing services, but now wants me to submit an offer, do I have to amend the agreement? Well, yes, you do. Under the showing services option, the broker has only agreed to provide access to property within the market area. The parties can amend the short form to select the full services option. Also use 1505, the Amendment to Buyer Tenant Representation Agreement, for that. The party should also determine if intermediary authorization is needed and what the broker's fee should be going forward if you previously only entered a showing services fee arrangement, but if you're now going to provide full services, you may also need to update the broker's fee. So you can amend that agreement, the short form showing services, but alternatively, the parties can choose to execute 1501, the long form, to switch over to providing the full range of services. If you need to amend an older version of 1501, the pre-June 24th version, you can use the new version of the amendment 1505 to do that. So just use the catch-all paragraph on the amendment if the specific paragraph in the buyer tenant representation agreement isn't available because we changed some paragraph numbers. Again, alternatively, you can also execute a new version of the applicable buyer tenant agreement. And with that, I will turn things over to Lori to talk about the compensation agreements.
Thank you, David. So along with the listing agreements, the buyer and tenant representation agreements, the other big area that we wanted to hit on today were compensation agreements. All of the changes coming for the MLS rules update is surrounding compensation to brokers. So we have a new form that we created, TXR 2406, Addendum Regarding Broker Compensation. This addendum is designed to be used as an addendum to the TREC residential contracts, except for farm and ranch. This will not be used to amend farm and ranch. That contract already has provisions in it related to compensation. But all other TREC residential contracts, you can use this addendum to add payment of buyer's broker's fees, including from a seller. Now that the MLS rules are changing, that there will no longer be offers of compensation from a listing broker to a buyer's broker on the MLS, we think this addendum will be useful to negotiate a fee from the seller to the listing broker directly. to the buyer's broker directly. I knew I was going to mess that up at least one time. This addendum refers back to other written representation agreements, 1101, 1501, or 2301 or 2, which I'll mention in a moment. If a compensation agreement such as 2401 or 2402 has been entered into, be sure to check that box on this form. I said 23, I meant 2401 and 2402 as far as our compensation agreements. These used to be called registration agreements. If no compensation agreement is in place, and now the seller will pay the buyer's broker directly, D2B can be used to specify the amount and authorize that payment. Use this box only when seller has agreed through contract negotiations with the buyer to pay for part or all of the buyer's broker's compensation. And that is not otherwise addressed in a separate compensation agreement. And remember, if 2406 is used to reflect that a seller is paying buyer broker compensation, a buyer's broker will need to amend their buyer's representation agreement with their buyer because the buyer needs to authorize that the broker can receive that compensation amount. Remember, on the representation agreement, the buyer's rep agreement, it's all compensation received from any source. The buyer has to authorize that in writing. As a reminder, and since I did mess up the numbers a moment ago, TXR 2401 is the compensation agreement between broker and owner. It has an updated name from registration to compensation. And TXR 2402 is the compensation agreement between brokers, also replacing the term registration with compensation, just for clarity. We did add language in those two forms stating that the agreement supersedes all prior agreements between the parties. We hope that you will use these for clarification, not for confusion. So these agreements supersede all prior agreements. In 2402, that's the compensation agreement between brokers. This is important. The cooperating broker's entitlement to compensation is based on procuring cause. Procuring cause was the standard for compensation under NAR MLS rules. Without compensation on an MLS, we felt it was important to maintain the familiar standard of procuring cause in the broker-to-broker compensation agreement. This protects the buyer's agent. If their efforts lead to a successful transaction, they deserve to be compensated. It also protects the listing broker. They only have to pay the procuring cause broker. So in multiple offer situations, listing brokers are free to sign more than one compensation agreement with multiple buyer's brokers with the confidence they will only have to compensate the one broker that is the procuring cause of that sale. So David, I'm going to turn it back to you at this point.
Sure. So the next slide, we have the referral agreement between brokers. Just a couple of updates on this one. So we did add a new paragraph to clarify the term of the agreement so that you can enter an end time and end date. And we also added a new paragraph to specify whether this agreement is for one transaction or multiple transaction. We had several questions about that. If you refer a buyer and then that buyer buys multiple properties during the term of the referral agreement, does that broker owe a referral for multiple transactions that buyer purchased or just the one? So now that becomes a negotiable term in the referral agreement between brokers. Lori, why don't you lead us home?
All right. We thought this might take longer, but we are about to wrap up. In conclusion, on June 24th, all forms vendors will have these updated and new forms posted for your use. The previous versions will be taken down at that point. You can use these updated and new forms even if your MLS has not removed cooperative compensation from the MLS yet. They will still work under the current model of cooperative compensation on the MLS. Use the new TXR 2701 beginning August 17th to update any representation agreements that are on pre-June 24th versions to ensure compliance with the new requirements. I hope you see what we did there. We know all MLSs will update their rules and practices and fields by August 17th, but you all will have the new versions beginning June 24th. So we hope that it is a smaller number of clients for which you have to update current representation agreements. But if you do, TXR 2701 is there for you. I do want to note here that the TREC contracts are not changing at this time. They may be updated later. Their broker lawyer committee is hard at work looking at potential changes. The earliest any TREC contracts would be updated would be January 1. And then I also want to leave you with that last statement that all compensation for brokerage services you will receive needs to be clear and authorized by your client. That is one of the main points of these changes. We have updated these forms and added new ones so that you can be transparent. Have conversations with your clients about how compensation may work in that particular transaction, and be sure to document and get authorization for all compensation received in any transaction. As I said before, this has been recorded and we will post it. We will continue to update FAQs based on questions we received today. And if at any time you have questions about these new forms and updated forms, you can call the hotline 512-480-8200. Don't everybody call it once right now. We don't have that much capacity, but that is there for your use and we hope that you will use it. Thank you so much. We appreciate you listening.
There we go. Okay, so I know that last little bit threw me over the edge too, because when you start thinking about multiple offers and you're having to sign these agreements that you're going to pay this other broker, but a buyer's broker, the seller's going to be paying that. That's what that one form is for you're just signing one, but it's only that one that you're going to be paying off of. That was a biggie.
Wait. This one that comes with a contract?
Not that one, the
No.
ones after that, 2401, 2402, that's agreement between broker, used to be called agreement between broker and owner. Now it's called compensation between broker and owner. 2402 is now called compensation between brokers. Used to be called agreement between brokers.
Yeah, it was.
Where did we use that one a lot?
Legislative.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Okay, so now it's called compensation between brokers. You can pull the lights up a little.
Okay.
So, thank you. So, one thing that she pointed out here, you guys online can't really tell, but used TXR 2701 on August 17th to update any representation agreements that are on pre-June 24, not June of 2024, June 24th, Monday, 2 days ago. That has to be done. Okay, so which is why I was saying, if you've got a listing that's sitting there, you might want to go ahead and put a new one in and you can use it. It doesn't have to be done until August the 17th. But if you've got 9 listings on August 17th, you got to get 9 amendments on there. Okay. I know it's a lot. Please, I will put the link back in this. I'll go back and watch it. Oh yes, it's off. All y'all looking at me like I'm nuts. It took me 3 times to get most of that.
So just, I know that y'all are probably doing this, but all of these changes on backside of what the required forms would be, will you be updating that?
I just got the
Come on.
buyer representation
Come
agreement
on.
and the listing agreement up.
What are you
Give me a
doing?
break.
What are you doing?
You know, this sounds bad and it's a lot of like work to change the process of how we do something. But stick with me, guys. It gives you an opportunity to make money on lower priced properties. So for instance, lots are low price and it's almost not worth the time to even do lots. It's $100,000 lot. You get paid $3,000. You take out the split. It's like, no, I won't work for that now. And you used to not have a leg to be able to negotiate on what commission was because I was against MLS rules. Now you can say, hey, I don't do anything for less than $7,500. And if your client is fine with that, then you can actually get paid on lower priced items now.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
And if you want to get paid more and you have the value to add to somebody, why can't you charge 3.5%? You couldn't do that before.
Yeah, and
It was, you got
leases.
paid what you got paid.
And leases, like
Yeah.
in Tarrant County, it's been 25% forever, Dallas County does.
I
not.
can agree with
I
that
would say-
statement. I think we've always been able to negotiate what we
Nope.
pay.
Well, I mean, you always can go, you can
But the
always.
seller couldn't pay
You
it,
couldn't
because the
pay it.
seller would just pay
Right,
what
you
was
just
in
have to have a
MLS.
conversation with
Yeah.
your buyer.
Yes.
because-
So not much changed other than that we got a lot more work to do.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of
Just more
thinking,
paperwork.
and I love your idea of a flow chart of what needs to happen when this occurs and this occurs. Again, remember how I started the meeting? Go to Slack first. Don't text me because I really don't know at this point, okay? So we're all gonna go through this together. That was the whole point of of us waiting until now to go through this, because we're all going through it together. I've just been through the video 3 times. I encourage you to go listen to the video a couple times, go to one of the other classes that's being offered, learn how to do this stuff, and then we can all help each other. Because McKnight may have something that's really great over Public Might, Baker Firm, Republic Title, Capital Title.
And
Go see some stuff,
I
okay?
do think,
Take the
I
classes.
do think the buyer agreement to tour the houses is a positive, for sellers is a positive, because that's another layer of safety
Mhm.
that,
Mhm.
I mean, think about how many people case your house or homes, I mean, online, whatever. I mean, that's one more added layer for us that we can extend value to our sellers to be like, we know who's coming in your houses. Because I think that's been, I mean, there's been no signed agreement. The open houses will be much more controlled.
Yeah, the open houses will be, if an agent holds it open for you, you're gonna have to get that buyer rep agreement.
Yeah, you're gonna stay in the
Wait.
front door.
I think
No,
you
no, no,
can-
no, no,
No,
I understand, no.
No.
If you're the listing agent, you don't have to.
Or a listing agent
Yes, in
from
your
the firm,
brokerage.
in your brokerage.
Okay.
So you go
I was
hold my,
like, dang, that's gonna be.
no, that would be a lot of work.
Yeah.
If you go hold my
Yes,
listing
we
open,
don't have to.
you don't have to do nothing.
As long
And,
as it's in
and,
the
and,
brokerage.
and then you've got that piece of paper sitting at the front door, a stack of them that big for all the people that are gonna come through. And you say, just so you know, I represent the seller
Yes.
on this particular thing. I can answer your questions. I can show you the house. I can give you all this paperwork. Sign this piece of paper.
Because we
But
have
hold
to-
on, wait, back up.
disclosure.
Because I do that automatically anyway, any open house I do, I'm representing the seller.
Right.
However, if you want to ask me specific questions, I'll answer them, anything that's public information or open to.
Right.
But if you want me to work for you, I'd be happy to work for you too.
You'd be
I'm
happy.
not obligated to them. I can
Yeah.
work for you. And I think-
With the amendment or the new buyer rep that
We
has
have a
the
little
intermediary.
document right here to
Yeah.
put your little
Well,
document
and
on
you
that. And I'll
and you
represent
And
you.
you can present it as a consultation, like if you'd like to step in a different consultation.
Wouldn't that be?
Perfect.
I said I was right there in the open house.
It doesn't say who signs this.
Pull the right lever, Janet.
That's right.
I hope you all have gotten something out of this. Well, I'm gonna let y'all go because it's 11:25. Thank you for staying
Can I
late.
just add one thing I'd like to
Always, go ahead.
Sure. No, I would like to sit down because like, what if someone says, well, you know, I don't want to hire you to pay you 3%, but I want you to show me houses. And I'm going to be like, well, cool. That's going to be like $250 for a
Right.
house, whatever. But can we put together like a pricing sheet where we're like, hey, we can roll this
No.
into your cost. You can't do
No,
that.
you
It's on,
cannot
the- it's
publicly
on it.
list it.
It's on there. It's not a blank for.
But I
It's
mean,
not a
like,
blank.
no, but I mean like, like
You can set
my
one.
services.
You can set your services.
But I'm just
but
saying,
we-
like,
we can't set
but
what,
as an office,
as a
we can't.
broker, I can't say, I don't, nobody here can, I will not ever say, I am not allowed to say, as the broker, you cannot list a house for less than 3%. That is completely against the law. And I would never, ever tell you that because I list houses for less than 3% if I'm working with the people over and over again. But the same thing can be said on the buyer side. We cannot say, hey guys, I am not saying that you guys all can go out and show houses for a day and the minimum charge is $250. I can't say that.
So I just like, I want a pricing sheet to be like, well, if I show you one house, it's this. If you want me to write a
That's up
contract,
to you. You
the
can
whole
do that
TikTok
individually.
thing.
Thank you all for being here. If anybody needs to go, you're welcome to go. I'm going to turn the video off. Thank you for joining us online. Hope y'all got something too. Kelly, your rider is in and I need to get with you. I'll text you in a little while. All right, y'all. See you later.
I would totally do it like my show. It's $500. But it's free. I'll start-
Yes, come on.
This is-